I'm going to call tonight's meeting to order. First on our agenda is the flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Murray.
Present.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Mayor Matsumoto Wright.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Here.
And Councilmember Woodard.
Present.
And I have not heard from Councilmember Sonmore.
Has anyone heard from her? Okay. We'll wait till later. Next on our agenda here is public comment. Do we have any public comment from anyone in the audience?
No one signed up in person, and if anyone in the online audience would like to speak, please use your hand raise tool. Going once? Going twice? That's it. No comment.
Great, thank you. I neglected to say welcome to 2023 to everybody, because this is a new year. This is our first meeting of the new year. And I'm hoping that this new year is going to be different and more successful for everybody, and a wonderful new year. Consent calendar. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to approve the consent calendar items A and B.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, so next will be the city manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council, and I wish all of you a happy and healthy new year as well. A few items in my report this evening. First is just a reminder that the Economic Alliance of Snohomish County has their legislative kickoff this week, Thursday from 10 to 12 in Everett. I think some of you have signed up and some of you we haven't heard from, but if there is a desire to attend, please let us know and we will register for you. Again, that's this Thursday in Everett. Secondly, the city manager search process is continuing well on its way. Today, the profile document that we've reviewed previously and discussed somewhat has been posted, and so it's the beginning of what is a 2-week, fairly aggressive recruitment effort that's aimed at individuals and organizations and others in order to move towards getting qualified and enthusiastic applicants for the city manager position for the city of Mountlake Terrace. And we are on schedule to have the finalists reviewed by council in mid-February with the interview set for the first few days of March. More details to come later. Thirdly, I wanted to just bring to council's attention the settlement through the state of Washington of the opioid case regarding addiction and holding organizations accountable for those very distressing factors that have gone around not just the state but the nation. The share of the settlement that comes to Mountlake Terrace will be forthcoming, and it's roughly $34,000. So we will be getting those funds fairly soon, and we're determining now exactly what strings may be tied to those to the use of those funds. But at this point, we're pleased to be getting money that had not been anticipated originally. I also wanted to bring to your attention, those of you who have more of a history with the city than I do, that the Parks and Recreation Department is about to remove a couple of play structures from the bicentennial playground. And specifically, there's something that's apparently been installed since it seems like well over 50 years ago, or between 40 and 50 years ago. It's called the hay wagon. I'll just show the picture if this is familiar to some of you who have been around, or perhaps when you were younger, maybe you played on it. But unfortunately, the hay wagon is no longer safe. It doesn't meet our standards. There's no way to replace it with a contemporary hay wagon, so we're basically going to do away with the hay wagon, as well as another play structure from 20 years ago, and we'll be making those changes. So these are not being done, these changes aren't being done arbitrarily. They're being done in conformance with safety standards and to make sure children are not playing on playground equipment that is not safe. And even though I haven't actually climbed on the hay wagon and looking at the picture, it certainly doesn't look safe to me. So I'm pleased with that decision. One other information item is regarding the Recreation and Parks Advisory Commission. They will be discussing in their role as the city's tree board a proposal that apparently our neighboring city in Linwood is actively involved with in a positive way already, and that's a fee in lieu of the loss of trees. And this would pertain particularly at the town center as new development occurs and there's a need to remove trees. Rather than stand in the way of that tree removal, this program allows for a developer to pay a designated fee, and then the fee would be put in a fund to purchase additional trees at other parts of the city in strategic locations. And again, this is simply in the proposal stages, so I'm not asking for council to necessarily weigh in on this proposal, but I wanted you to be aware that this is something that the commission will be looking at, and the staff is reviewing what the Linwood proposal is about. Well, the Linwood is not a proposal, Linwood is a program, and so we'll be looking at how that works. And that, Madam Mayor, would conclude my report at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Manager. A quick follow-up question about the hay wagon, because I know that's brought forth lots of discussion and interest when it's come up previously. I think one of the things that was discussed was perhaps being able to repurpose some of that in some way, shape, or form, whether that was artwork or something like that. Do you know if that is still something that is under consideration as we remove it from public use for play?
I don't know. I can certainly find out whether it would be used in some artistic fashion. I really don't think there's any feasible way to have it be used as, as refurbished playground equipment or anything that people might climb on. But if it does have historical significance, perhaps it could be maintained. So let me check into that. And my guess is that that's not being pursued, but I will certainly confirm that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, Councilmember Sonmore?
You bring up a good question, because I thought at one of our meetings, you just said that it can't be refurbished.
I'm sorry, you're saying the hay wagon, the intent was to refurbish it?
You need to turn it on.
A report out on something about that.
The
I mean, if
I'm on the Arts
Audit.
Commission. I could speak if you want something on that.
Yeah, the information that I had was that the new playground is ready, and park staff intends to remove the 1999 play structure, which had been intended for ages 5 to 12. It's a red, white, and blue structure, as well as the hay wagon installed around 1980. The existing structure will be removed as it has been replaced, and the hay wagon is not able to be repaired or redesigned in any way that satisfies our risk management principles or insurance guidelines. We do plan on repurposing the old wagon wheels, the old wagon wheels for a future art project or park amenity, such as a bike rack or tables. The structure will be removed in the next 2 weeks. So yeah, there will be a repurposing of part of it, the wheels, as opposed to the whole thing. So that's a yes and no answer.
That answered my question. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, thank you, City Manager. Next is going to be our review of the ARPA funds. And who's taking over that?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, that would be me again. The memo that you have in your packet is simply revisiting of the American Rescue Plan Act, or the so-called ARPA funds, which are federal funds that local governments throughout the state and throughout the nation did receive over the last few years. The memo summarizes the source of the funds, some of the strings attached to the funds, and the fact that of the $5.962 million that the city has received, there still is a balance of $4.686 million remaining. And so the city has been very conservative and cautious in the budgeting in recent years. In the budget that you approved just last month, there was an additional $585,000 in year one and $190,000 in year two of the two-year budget, but that's part of the totals that I mentioned to you a moment ago. And so in your packet was also a memo from the former city manager, which was presented in August, 4.5 months ago, to the city council, which tied some of the use of the funds to the various goals that the city has adopted. Without going through all the specific funding issues, my intent this evening was to set the stage for a council workshop at a date to be determined, but I'd like to suggest within the next 30 to 45 days at the latest. And the staff has spent quite a bit of time at the executive leadership team level discussing what would be the most effective use of these funds in a one-time fashion to, if you don't mind the expression, the biggest bang for the buck in terms of what would help the city of Mountlake Terrace's economic development moving forward, and to improve safety for both residents, employees, and others. And there are a number of needs ranging from the Town Center Main Street project to the fact that this building doesn't have an emergency generator, and to other infrastructure needs that the city has. What the staff is prepared to do within the next week to week and a half is to put together some option packages for the council to discuss and review and make decisions on at the workshop that I mentioned a moment ago. So my purpose this evening is not to recommend a specific plan of funding, but to let you know that this money is there. It needs to be expended within a couple of years, or else we do lose it. And of course, the purpose of it was to assist local governments to get through the difficult COVID-related pandemic timeframe, which the city has been doing. And so, with your concurrence, I would like to come back with a recommendation for a timeframe and some options so that you all can review the options and then have a discussion among yourselves with the staff's support to determine what would be the best way forward for the use of ARPA. Again, the decision on the use of ARPA will be yours, not ours, but the staff would like to, as we did with the budget, would like to assist with some recommendations and options for your consideration. So that would be a summary of why it's on the agenda. And rather than specify a date now, I'd like to leave it open while we look at the schedule of other items that will be coming before you. Whether it needs to be a special meeting other than your normal workshop remains to be seen. I'm of the opinion right now that we can include this in one of your Thursday study sessions so that we would not necessarily need a special meeting, but that can certainly change due to circumstances as well. So that would be my presentation. Are there questions any council members have for me?
Any questions or comments? Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Andrew, for all of the work that's been done to help set us up to start to move forward on this process. I know we're all eager to start making some decisions around some of the allocation of those funds. I guess I'm curious, when you talk about packages coming forward to us, what information what you're thinking will come with those recommendations to help us understand the decisions that we're being asked to make. I guess part of what I was looking at as I was getting ready for this meeting was trying to figure out that piece, because I think that's been our challenge, right? There's a lot of worthwhile causes that we could put these funds toward, and trying to prioritize them is not an easy task. And so I was looking at, I think some communities have used like decision-making rubrics, to kind of help guide some of those processes. So I guess I'm just curious what you're thinking about to help inform us as we are then going into that retreat to have those conversations.
Thank you, Councilmember Murray. What I'm envisioning is a process where we would be presenting options that would have not just a description of what would be done, but the fairly precise dollar amount associated. So we wouldn't be speculating. We'd be, estimating with some certainty to tie it to a long-range goal that the city would have in terms of improvement of the quality of life for the city and its residents, and the fact that it can make a difference because it's one-time funding that we don't have in our normal processes. What I don't want to do is present options that would create expectations for continuity, that we're going to do something for a year or so and then all of a sudden stop doing it, because I think that would be difficult for everyone. I am open to, I mentioned putting this together in the next a few days in order to prepare for a presentation at a workshop. If council members have a specific inclination, either this evening or later on, and you wish to call me or email me, I'm very open to hearing from you up front and not just waiting until the workshop.
Thank you. That was really helpful. I appreciate it.
All right, anyone else? I guess not. So we'll have, you'll come back to us for more suggestions on what to do, dates, times, whatever.
Yes. Within a few days, we'll present some recommendations for the time frame, and if that's acceptable, then we'll get ready for the packages. Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So next on our agenda is the presentation and discussion on future Snohomish County Fire Services, and I see we have, our Assistant City Manager.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. For the record, Stephen Clifton, Assistant City Manager. Also with me tonight is Janella Lewis, the city's Finance Director, and then Bob or Robert Eastman, and also Susan Hines with South County Fire. They're here also to answer any questions the council might have that I'm not able to answer. The fire and emergency medical services are critical public safety functions. Cities can either provide these services directly by operating a fire department, contract with a fire EMS service provider, or annex to a fire district or authority. Mountlake Terrace currently contracts with South County Fire to provide fire and EMS services And within the PowerPoint presentation later, I'll discuss that in more detail. The cost of fire services is one of the largest cost items within the city budget, the largest being funding the city's police department. In the next several weeks or months, the City Council will need to determine its preferred path forward to secure delivery of fire and EMS services to the city of Mountlake Terrace after the city's current service contract with South County Fire expires at the end of 2024. And I'll discuss some of the items related to that expired contract in a moment. Based on discussions with the City Council Regional Fire Authority Committee, staff have been engaged in discussions with South County Fire to explore the future of fire and EMS services to the city. And tonight I'll be presenting a general overview of the current situation as it relates to the delivery of fire and EMS services within Mountlake Terrace, some background related to the creation of South County Fire, as well as South County Fire overview, future options for fire and EMS service delivery, annexation versus contracting for services, potential annexation calendar, things to consider prior to annexing into a fire district authority, and other items. So with that, I'll begin talking about the slides that you see on the screen. Okay, so to be more specific about the contract itself, the city and South County Fire are under a 20-year interlocal agreement. South County Fire is considered a regional fire authority. RFAs, that's the acronym for Regional Fire Authority, is a special purpose district, and they are independent taxing authority that provides funding for fire and emergency medical services. An RFA can be made up of cities, fire districts, or a combination of the two. The city is at a crossroads in the delivery of fire and emergency medical services because the current agreement expires at the end of 2024. South County Fire has formally notified the city of its intent to terminate the interlocal agreement effective December 31st, 2024, and a new agreement will need to be negotiated or entered into and would include new terms. South County Fire has stated that paying parity with South County Fire taxpayers could increase the city's costs for fire EMS services up to twice the amount starting in 2025. A new arrangement for providing fire and EMS services must be secured by the end of 2024. Some background: South County Fire Protection District 1 and subsequently South County Fire have provided fire service and EMS services in Snohomish County since 2001. The city has contracted with South County Fire for EMS and fire services since January 13th, 2005. On August 8th, 2017, voters within the city of Linwood and Fire District 1 approved a plan creating and funding the Snohomish County Fire District and Rescue Regional Fire Authority. On August 7th, 2018, District 1 voters approved a 10-year emergency medical services levy, which allowed voters to dissolve the Fire District 1 in 2019. On April 26, 2022, the city of Mill Creek voted by a 76% approval margin. They chose to join the South County Fire RFA. And in April 25, 2023, the city of Briar residents will vote on whether to annex into South County Fire RFA. This slide here provides an overview of South County Fire, and they currently serve up to 300,000 residents in a 57 square mile area of southwest Snohomish County. The population served includes unincorporated communities, also Briar, Edmonds, and Mountlake Terrace. They're currently provided services under a contract, and that's the area that you see in hash marks at the lower left corner of the slide. And Linwood and Mill Creek are located within the South County Fire District, and that's the solid yellow area that you see. Staffing: South County Fire provides full-time staffing of 15 neighborhood fire stations Daytime population, 62 workers, and nighttime, 56. Fire stations, there are 19 total. Station 19 is located within the city of Mountlake Terrace. And then as far as governance, there's a 7-member board of commissioners. 2 are elected at large and 5 are districted. In 2022, the estimated tax rate was $1.51 for every $1,000 of assessed valuation, equivalent for existing customers within the fire authority. The current situation is that the city pays South County Fire using general fund revenues, including all revenue from the city's EMS levy and an additional contribution from other city revenues, such as the general fund. In the right-hand green text box, there's a breakdown of how the services are paid for. In 2023, I highlighted this as part of the initial presentation for the 23-24 biennial budget, but the estimated amount for services is $3,496,000. And the EMS levy is 38% of that. Transport fees make up 12%. Fire protection from the Water Utility Fund makes up 7%, and the general fund 42%. I did note at the beginning of last year's biennial budget that there was an increase of 17.2% or $514,000 higher than the 2022 charge. And in 2024, there was a forecasted or is a forecasted increase of 4.5% or $160,000 additional dollars above 2023. And then also for 2023, there's retroactive pay in the amount of $216,000. Some of the options for fire and EMS service delivery include reestablishing our own fire department, but that would be very expensive, almost cost prohibitive, and would take a very long time to do so. Contracting with another city, the city of Linwood is now part of the South County Fire District. Edmonds has a 20-year contract, and theirs does not expire until 2030. And then Shoreline, they serve Shoreline, Kenmore, Lake Forest Park, and Woodway. Discussions have taken place in the past. I understand there are some communication issues because Shoreline communicates primarily with King County 911, and we really want our fire services communicating primarily with Snohomish County. You could also negotiate a new contract for services with South County Fire prior to the end of 2024 for the delivery of services, that should say in 2025. As mentioned earlier, that would be short term, and that would almost double the cost to the city. And then also the last option is to annex into South County Fire. So this slide discusses or illustrates how annexation is different than contracting for services. First and foremost, a fire and EMS service contract can be entered into by the City Council without voter approval. The property owners in this case pay the cost of fire and EMS services through their taxes to the city. Of course, those are collected first by Snohomish County and then transferred to the city. And then the term of the contracts vary, and for Mountlake Terrace, as I mentioned earlier, a new contract must be entered into for services to extend beyond 2024. Annexation requires voter approval. In this case, a simple majority of voters in Mountlake Terrace would have to approve the annexation. And instead of paying the city for fire and EMS service, property owners in the city would pay the South Snohomish County Fire District directly as part of their tax bill. City and South Snohomish County Fire governance boards must agree to the annexation proposal in advance. The city places the annexation measure on the ballot. After annexation, the cost of fire service comes off the city's budget, and the city's EMF levy is eliminated. And then the Mountlake Terrace residents can also run for office to serve on the Board of Commissioners of South County Fire. So in the green box at the bottom of the slide, I do highlight that in order for South County Fire taxes to be in place when a contract ends, voters must approve the annexation no later than April 2024. That is a special election. The South County Fire taxes and fees would then be imposed starting January 1st, 2025. The risk in waiting until April 2024 to vote is that failure would result in a need for a new short-term contract with South County Fire because the taxes would be collected later than January 1st, 2025. South County Fire's rates in Washington, fire agency rates in urban and suburban areas typically range from about $1.35 per 1,000 assessed valuation to $2 per 1,000 assessed valuations. Most are above $1.50. South County Fire's rates are on the lower end of the range at about $1.51 per 1,000 of assessed valuation. Statewide regionalization of fire and EMS services is occurring because it's so expensive for municipalities to provide the service on their own. At this point, only Everett and Mukilteo operate their own fire departments in the county, and all of the cities in the county have either annexed into a fire district or regional fire authority or have a contract for services from one of them. This slide relates to what is called a fire benefit charge, and this is something that would occur upon annexation. Fire benefit charge is not a tax, it's a fee that is based on the fire response needs of a structure. For example, under a fire benefit charge, a single-family residential property will pay less than a large commercial structure or multifamily apartment. For example, an easy way to think about that is 2,000 square feet versus 20,000 square feet. Two identical single-family homes will pay the same benefit charge even if they have different property tax values. This helps with financial stability and ensures a portion of the costs are charged based on the cost of providing fire response to a structure rather than its tax value. In order to impose a benefit charge, the agency's maximum fire levy rate is reduced by 1/3 to $1 per 1,000 assessed valuation versus $1.50. And I did ask about this, and if you have questions about this after I'm done, I think Robert Eastman can be the best person to answer this for you tonight. Fire benefit charges must be approved by voters before first being imposed and must be approved again by voters after the initial 6-year term. The benefit charge formula and collection amount is set annually by the Board of Commissioners, and there is an appeals process. And total collections each year from a benefit charge cannot exceed 60% of the agency's operating budget. And then South County Fire is the only agency in Snohomish County that currently has a fire benefit charge. Annexation to South County Fire. As noted earlier, South County Fire is not willing to enter into a long-term service contract, but will provide an interim services contract if annexation is turned down by the city voters. South County Fire is interested in annexing Mountlake Terrace. If annexation occurs, the existing fire and EMS services are maintained, and South County Fire has stated they intend to move more resources to Fire Station number 19. It also helps stabilize the city's property tax rates and move the city's budget towards longer-term stability. This relates to the first night's presentation that I gave during the biennial budget process, where I talked about just for 2023 alone, there's an additional $900,000 that the city is paying for fire services. And then, of course, it goes up in 2024. South County Fire would continue to operate a community paramedic program to respond effectively to low acuity 911 calls, in addition to conducting robust public education and fire prevention programs. The city and South County Fire are in discussions about contract and annexation terms. The final terms for both annexation or the backup short-term service contract are not yet known. We expect that a short-term services contract for year 2025 would be in the range of parity to the cost of annexation. If so, the financial impact of the city's general fund will be considerably higher than that which the city and its taxpayers are currently paying. If annexation occurs, there would be a cost shift in how South County Fire receives revenue to pay for the services. I did mention this earlier, that residents would pay directly to South County Fire via the county assessor versus paying the city via the county assessor. And then a key issue would be whether the city should retain ownership of Fire Station 19. Typically, transfer of assets like this occurs and is transferred to the service provider, South County Fire, and Mountlake Terrace currently has full ownership interest in station number 19. This slide is a summary of the annexation calendar. So first, the city would need to adopt a resolution requesting annexation, followed by sending the resolution to South County Fire. City and South County Fire RFA would meet to discuss the terms and conditions of annexation, including revisions to the RFA plan and interlocal agreements necessary to effectuate the annexation. We would need to perform a SEPA review. This would be non-programmatic because there aren't any actual physical structures being constructed. And then South County Fire Board adopts a resolution amending the RFA plan if necessary to deal with the requested annexation and grant the request of the city to annex. And then the city would hold an election with a simple majority required for approval. This slide highlights the annexation calendar. For example, in year 2023, there are 4 opportunities to conduct an election. February 14th is, there's just not enough time to put something on the ballot for a February 14th election. April, there's the word preferred next to the April. And the reason that would be preferred for this year is if you were to put this on the ballot and have the voters vote on it, then the Snohomish, the South County Fire taxes and fees would begin being collected on January 1st of 2024. So it aligns really well with a January 1st date. For annexation and election and transition schedule for 2024, there are 4 dates on that as well: February 13th, April 23rd, August 6th, and November 5th. I mentioned earlier that in order for taxes and fees to begin being collected on January 1, 2025, an election would have to be successful on April 23rd of 2024. So things to consider for the City Council if the annexation is approved. Collectively, city property owners will be paying more post-annexation versus pre-annexation. If the city's levy rate remains the same, it will have additional non-committed revenue. So the question for the council is, should some or all of it be returned to property taxpayers, or should some or all of it be applied to fund additional service enhancements? If annexation is rejected by the voters, a new service contract, possibly 1 year, will need to be negotiated or entered into with South County Fire for 2025. Maybe, perhaps, with a 1-year extension. Again, the reason we use the terms possibly or maybe is just unknown at this time. After that, another contract must be entered into with South County Fire. If a vote does not occur in 2023, the city will need to place the annexation before the voters on April of 2024 in order for it to take effect in August, with taxes and fees actually starting to be collected on January 1st of 2025. And the city will need to find additional revenue or spend down reserves or other one-time monies or make major budget cuts to pay for the new 2025 contract. And the reason I say that without giving you specific numbers, we've run preliminary numbers, but we're not quite ready to present those to you this evening because we're still working through the spreadsheets, and it's a lot of number crunching that we're doing right now, and we hope to provide that to you hopefully within the next week. So in conclusion, the city has a very good deal actually right now for fire and EMS services. That is close to ending. Any option going forward will be considerably more expensive, but more in line with what other residents of Snohomish County are paying. Of the new viable options available to the city, the most viable is to seek voter approval to annex Mountlake Terrace into South County Fire. Annexation to South County Fire would ensure continued high-quality fire service and would make additional programs and services available to residents and businesses. To have replacement service and funding in place when the South County Fire contract ends, voters would have to approve annexation before the end of 2024. In order to make the case to the voters, the council will need to determine in the near term whether and how to reduce or reallocate funds if the annexation is approved, and what the plan would be to pay for a service contract if annexation fails. If the City Council wish to place a measure to annex on the ballot, the next step is to adopt a resolution formally launching the annexation process. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that the council might have, and also Janella Lewis and South County Fire staff are here this evening as well to help out.
Here we have Councilmember Murray. Murray.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Assistant City Manager, and everyone who's put in a lot of time and work and energy bringing us through this process. I guess the question I have, and I had it previously, and I still don't think I quite have, at least in my mind, understand, and so I want to make sure that I have clarity. So we have an understanding that if we were to move forward with annexation, that the cost to residents would be higher than the current cost. And that's because we recognize that we have a very, very good deal right now. So not commenting on that piece, but I guess my question is there a reason that we can't put the question to our residents sooner, but not have that go into effect until our current contract ends? It seems like, I guess, and maybe I'm not fully understanding, but it seems to me if we were to move forward with annexation as of January 1st of 2024, we would be foregoing an entire year of our residents paying a lower rate for services. And I want to make sure that we are not doing that. So I guess, can you help me understand that piece?
That's something we could look into.
Okay.
It's not clear to me whether or not that's possible. I don't know if, Bob, can you come on up? I don't know if you've done this in the past.
But. If, let's say you went in April, the
Yeah.
ballot measure has to be done within 12 months. You can't let it go longer than the 12 months. And so you're under that stipulation with regards to that. So if you went to ballot in April, you can make it effective the following April.
Okay.
Right? So then the current contract would remain in effect through 24. The boundaries would be established August of 24, and then the fire authority would have the ability to tax in January of 25.
Okay. Thank you. They don't make it easy, do they?
No.
I appreciate the answer. That was the only immediate question I had. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Sonmore?
Trouble with these marks. I break them. I just wanted to bring Leslie up too, just so if you want to talk about how we would go out to the voters. I know you have a strategic strategy.
When we did this in the city of Mill Creek, we did extensive voter education. We had some public meetings. We did things on social media. We did mailings just to get people informed.
It is quite an ordeal to go out. There's going to be a lot of planning, a lot of pros and cons sides. I'm just thinking about when we went out for City Hall and we had to have committees do that. And so it's not like a slam dunk. It's something that we'd really have to rally our citizens around and show them the benefits of what we would get and what will happen if we don't get it. Because right now I was just looking at ARPA funding and I'm thinking, okay, do we save some of that or do we do something else for one-time funding if it doesn't go through and we have to have an additional contract for a while? But do I understand? I thought I saw Briars going out in 2025. I was thinking that they were going out this year.
This year.
Oh, it must be when it starts, is in 2025 for them or whatever. But so they're also going out at the same time as we're possibly thinking about.
Yes.
And so when is our, just to make sure, when is our cutoff date to decide if we go out in April?
Yes.
April 25th is considered a special election, so we are required to provide the Snohomish County assessor with our resolution within 60 days of the special election, so that would put us at February 24th. And I looked at the calendar, and the city council has a Monday meeting right before the 24th. So February 21st would be the latest that you could take a vote on this or adopt a resolution and then get it up to the Snohomish County.
Go ahead.
And one thing, Mill Creek did hold public meetings prior to putting it on the ballot. So like then they did an April special election, and we had public meetings January, February, I believe.
It doesn't pass. How can we go out the following year, or do we have to wait so many months after a? Bob, do you know that one?
You can go back the following year, and I think if you go out a third time and are successful, there's a time frame you got to wait. I don't know that for a fact, but I know if, like, let's say you did go in April, and you weren't successful, you could go again in the primary or the general. And I believe, based on our conversations with Breyer, you could go the following special. And then at some point in time, there's a place where you got to take a break. But I think I think in conversations with Breyer, there's three chances before you have and I don't know what that is. I'm trying to remember what legal counsel told us, but there's a point in time where you have to take a break, and you can't just go after and after and after.
Yeah.
So at some point they say you got to stop, do your education, take your time, and then go back. But I think you have three chances first.
So that allows us some buffer room, but we can't go out next April for the special election because we need the 12 months?
In order for us, the RFA, to collect taxes the following year, the boundaries of the RFA have to be established August 1st of the previous year. So if you just remember from tax collection purposes, if the borders are set, in other words, the time we've done the vote and the annexation becomes effective August 1st of whatever year, the RFA can levy taxes the following January. So if you go before August of this year or before April, if you go April, you can set the RFA can take effect August 1st. If you go in the primary or the general, takes effect the following whatever time. But the borders have to be set by August 1st for us to levy the following year. So if you remember that date, that's an important date as far as when the cost of fire service comes out of the general fund and the other funding sources for the city.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you all for the presentation. It is a big decision that we have in front of us, so we need to take action on, and appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. Leslie, I wanted to get, it's not just educating us, as we know. We talked a little bit about the voter education that's required. Give us an idea of the time frame that based on what would happen in Mill Creek and what your experience is. How much time do we need to set aside? In other words, we could decide, by February 21st, we're going to put it on the ballot in April. Is that sufficient time to be able to run a sufficient voter education campaign or program to make sure that the voters are aware and understand what they're voting on, or do we need more time?
That's the timeline Mill Creek was on. You're looking at the same timeline they were on last year. They were having these kinds of discussions in December of 2021. We did all the public meetings in January, February, and they voted right up to the deadline, as I recall, to put it on the ballot. So we were able to do the voter education in that case and come out with over 70%.
Right, okay, so
So
in
we
other
were
words,
able to do that. We had, frequently asked questions, and then there was a mailer after they voted to place it on the ballot.
okay, great. And so you went into action as far as educating the voters after that February date that they put it on, officially put it on the ballot. But they had about only 2 or 3 months of discussion leading up to that as well. And do you recall what kind of public interaction there was during that discussion period with the council before they put it on the ballot? Is there, in other words, kind of what I'm wondering about is how much do we need to educate ourselves and our voters as we're putting it on the ballot? And is there a game plan that we might do it more effectively to set the stage properly?
I don't know, I don't remember in December how much interaction they had, because I wasn't involved in that, but after December, when they were moving towards putting it on the ballot, we had a couple public meetings. I don't remember having a lot of questions, but we did have public meetings. There was a lot of commentary from different people in their newspapers there leading up to placing it on the ballot. And yeah, we didn't really have a lot of comments.
So one of the questions that's always asked in this is a certain amount of the fire cost right now comes from the general fund. And the question, this is the question that Mill Creek dealt with. It's the same question Linwood dealt with when we created the RFA is, what's the city going to do? Right? Is the city, and the meetings that they had with a public comment prior to them actually putting on the ballot, they know their residency, and they had folks that are very politically active. That was the question they wanted the council to ask. And so the council answered that question, and they took equivalent dollar amount that was coming out of the general fund to cover the contract that they currently had with Snohomish Regional, and they agreed as a group that they were going to reduce, and I believe they did it within their general tax levy, they were going to reduce, and I want to say it was 2.7 million and change, right? And so once they did that and took action as a council, for all intents and purposes, the folks that were critical of that conversation, in other words, the people that said, okay, you're going to offload this and you're just going to keep the money and do whatever the windfall.
Right.
Once they answered that question, the rest of the conversation became, there wasn't a whole lot of conversation after that, right?
Kind of a no-brainer after that.
To the point where the folks that were critical of where the city was going to go, when they took that action, those folks then said, you made an awesome decision and we support it. So most of the conversation that happened prior to that was around that topic, is the question that the city council is, if you were to do this and it was going to be successful, what happens with the revenue that you were spending on fire, or the cost, and how do you guys deal with that as a council? And having that question answered, the sooner the better,
Right.
is a question that you're at least historically with us has always been the number one topic of concern for folks from whether it was the city of Linwood, city of Mill Creek, city of Briar, is what's going to happen with the dollars that you're no longer expending.
Great. So, yeah, so in other words, we've been talking about this for 5-7 years now, right? Most of us are pretty familiar with the topic and know what we know, realize that we need to put it on the ballot and get the voters to understand the challenges that we're facing financially and the impact it has, and the fact that we're going to get better fire service. Our citizens will have better fire service at the end of the day as if we annex in. So, but you're right. I think that the bottom line comes back to taxes and what happens to my property taxes. And am I just adding to my property taxes, or are we just shifting the cost burden and the burden of services away from us contracting with you to directly providing those services through you? So that sounds like that's what we need to, between now and February 21st, we need to be having those discussions, and we need to answer that question amongst ourselves to be able to say, okay, we're going to put it on the ballot and we're going to do this with your tax dollars. Very good. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess for me, I would just go back to, I think I still have a question. Do we put it on the ballot in April of this year? And I think that is a piece, at least for me, of the question before us. I think the other pieces are very, as Mayor Pro Tem Wall mentioned, are other important questions for us to answer. And I think part of the question before us is April enough time, given all of the things that we have going on and before us right now? And to your point about, I think, particularly education, does that give us enough time to connect with residents in a way that helps them understand why we're putting this before them? And then I will just add again, I think I understand, like, I don't want to put us in a situation where ultimately we put something forward that doesn't pass and there are, you know, really negative financial consequences. And I think we need to be able to spell that out to our residents. But I also don't want to burden them with extra costs at a challenging time that we could potentially save them a year on by waiting to bring this before them. So I think we need to have that conversation as well.
Okay. I don't see any other hands going up. So I don't know if we have enough time to educate our citizens, but we probably should make our decisions sooner than later. Stefan?
Yes. Discussions about the timeline are very important because it has an effect on what staff needs to do and provide to the city council in order to help you make your decision. Because there is a lot of financial information, obviously, that you need to absorb and digest in order to make the best decision you can for your constituents. And so if April is the date you want to move towards, if you could let us know, we'll have to move it at a more rapid pace, but we can do it to provide you the information you need. If it's not, we can then pace ourselves accordingly. So,
Madam Mayor, may I just add to what Mr. Assistant City Manager Clifton just said, that Council, of course, has an RFA committee with Councilmember Sonmore and Councilmember Woodard, and also Doug McCardle agreed to continue on for the short duration of the next few months. And so you do have a standing committee that, to my knowledge, has no set meeting dates before it, but if there's sufficient interest on council's part, then I would think we need to gear up to meet with that committee and kind of, as Stefan just said, the staff really needs to go into high gear if we're going to do this. And so, and I want to express appreciation for the committee in terms of the work they've done thus far, but there would be more work to be done. And I'm assuming that the fire district would assist with the public information and the messaging, since they're a key player in this endeavor. And do keep in mind that the Mill Creek successful vote was a case of a city actually changing service providers, which is a little bit different. In this case, we have a service provider that I believe has good standing in the city. And so we're not changing the service provider, we're just changing the governance structure, which in some ways is good, but in some ways is more confusing because people may wonder why we're doing this. If we're going to, you know, the day before the election have the same provider and the day after the election have the same provider. But as the Assistant Fire Chief just mentioned, I do believe the key distinction will be what the city intends to do with its general fund levy, because if we're not prepared to publicly state a commitment in that regard, I think people will be hard pressed to increase their taxes as much as they'd be asked to do and not see any give and take. Perhaps this could be viewed as a revenue neutral thing for property taxpayers, which I think would go over a lot easier.
One last thing I forgot to mention is that the city council certainly has the option or ability to adopt a resolution to request annexation without actually putting it on the ballot. So you could let your voters know that you intend to move towards annexation and decide on a date later on.
Yeah, what that allows is, and I'll be quite honest, in the conversations with staff, we've already started looking at a plan amendment to allow the city of Mountlake Terrace, just in the conversation we have with staff, knowing if the city chooses to move forward and wants to go as early as April, we've done some preliminary work on our RFA plan to start doing some of the editing to amend the plan to allow the city of Mountlake Terrace to annex in. And that process really should start after the city sends an annexation requesting, because that kind of starts that ball rolling. We're good enough partners and been great partners for the last 25 years I've been in this organization that we know we know the conversations we've had, and you know, we want to make sure that we're in a position, if the city council chooses to move for April, that we're not the ones holding you up, whether it's whether it's the city staff or the RFA staff. We want to make sure we're ahead of the curve, at least as far as we can. And so we've done some of that preliminary work. If the city decides to move forward and wants to go on that timeline, which is the fastest timeline, we're already doing some of the work to make that happen.
Councilmember Salmore?
So I know the board kind of has to look at the application, so it's not like we just say, and they have to approve us. So you're saying that, when would we have to, before, I'll back up a little bit, when would we have to have the application in by if we went in April?
So well, for us, so let me make sure I understand your question. Are you talking about when everything needs to be to the county for you to put on the ballot?
No.
Or just our
Your process.
So I guess the sooner we get a resolution requesting, the sooner it allows us to bring the amended plan forward for the board to review, and then the board to adopt by resolution. I'm sure the pre-annexation agreement that was talked about, as part of that pre-annexation agreement, if you go look at the Briar City Council packet tonight, you'll see their pre-annexation agreement that they're considering, plus a restated, amended interlocal agreement that allows for service to continue if we're not successful at the ballot. And so those are good templates to go from. But if the sooner we got a resolution to request, the sooner then our staff at the RFA could get the RFA plan amended, you know, we'd work with your staff to review and get our board to approve it. And my hope would be is that we could, I mean, we're talking in a perfect world, is we could get that in front of, if we got a resolution sooner than later, I could get it in front of my board optimistically next Tuesday. That's probably too fast. But we would bring it before them on the third meeting of the third Tuesday of the month. And with the request, it'd be delivered to the board, and then we would bring forward the RFA plan amendment shortly thereafter. Board would probably look at it for one meeting and then hopefully adopt it the next meeting. I mean, we're talking pretty quick.
So I'm putting on my project management hat and my slides and scopes, and so we'd have 2 chances for meetings, and if we want it on the third Tuesday of the month, we'd have to tell staff now. And then if we want it next month, we'd have to give them, what, Stefan, like 3 weeks notice to put it together? How much notice do you have to put that application together?
You mean the resolution for the county?
No, for the board.
Oh, boy. I am not sure how much time we'll need at this point.
So, and then I'm going to flip it here. So on page 6, it's $890,000 extra that we're paying. If we were to go on the April ballot, can we approach the board and ask to not have to pay some of the retro fees or the forecasted fee of 4.5 in 2024? Is there any negotiation at all?
So.
Have to ask.
So, no, so our board has a intergovernmental committee. And I think if that's the perfect venue to ask that question. I will tell you, I'm staying an extra year. I was due to retire this month. I'm staying an extra year.
I know we talked about that about 6 months
As a result
ago.
of, I mean, I was part of, I'm going to soapbox, I was part of the original agreement that brought the city of Bryan, the city of Mountlake Terrace into the RFA. And I've had a privileged career and been able to do the regional efforts in the county. For me, the mic drop moment would be for the city of Bryan and the city of Mountlake Terrace to formally become part of the RFA at the end of the year, for me. So I'm staying another year to see this through, for me. So I forget what your question was. Oh, so.
I always want a discount.
So at the end of the, so I guess what I would say is that question is a good question to ask. We've got intergovernmental that I would like to say it would, in a perfect world, we need to set up a meeting with the two groups, the two subcommittees, as soon as we can. So some of those questions can be asked of the players that need to make those decisions. And I would say, if the city's serious about moving forward with annexation, I think my board wants that very badly.
There's just, and I've known you a long time, just being very honest, looking at our left one fees compared to other cities' fees, looking at what we've done in the past with the fire district, it's just, we fight here for our citizens. Every ounce we can get, we want to save them money. And so if we could do a little negotiation, that would be wonderful. But we will set up our meeting with our RFA board, and I know you can't make any promises, but that's something that we should get on our agenda soon to come back. I don't know, when would you suggest that we come back and talk to the council again on this? Because it's just, it's coming quick and furious, and so I know
Well,
Steve and I will make ourselves available.
I think what Bob just suggested was that there's an the intergovernmental committee of his board could meet with the RFA committee of this council. In other words, the three of you, well, including Councilmember McCardle, who's not here this evening, but to have the three of you to meet with them as soon as possible. We can coordinate dates. I don't know if we can do that here with them not being here, but we could perhaps by tomorrow come up with a date that works. If those of you who are here this evening are able to give me dates, we can at least work with this tomorrow and try to set it up within a week.
I would just like our board to meet before we meet with their board, just so we're prepared.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
And I think that would be a good idea, because I think that would be where the finance director, myself, and maybe even Bob can talk with you about the actual numbers of what it might cost before you actually have the two bodies meet.
Councilmember Ryan.
I would concur with going to the board as soon as possible, our board, so we could get things going.
Okay, so we're going to then have our RFA board meet before yours, from what I gather.
Right.
We'll get the dates down.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is that our RFA, I don't know if it's committee or board, but our RFA group will meet in a pre-meeting format as quickly as possible in order to set up a joint meeting, hopefully within a week, with the intergovernmental group of the other board.
Yes.
And so if I can talk to the two of our members before you leave this evening to see if we can get a date set right away, that would be helpful.
and
Yes.
just to clarify, Bob, did you say that?
No, I've got an intergovernmental that's separate, right? So a subcommittee that I know are eager to meet with you guys. I mean, they're eager to meet with you, and the sooner we do that, the better, because if if the consensus is April is where we want to go, we can work everything backward. Staff can sit in a room and work everything backwards and be very specific of where we need to go and what actions need to be done to fulfill that on both sides, right? There's actions that'll need to happen on the city side. There's actions that are going to need to happen on the RFA side. And in some cases, my board will have to take action first, and then your guys just take action afterwards. And so there's a little bit of a dance that goes along with that. So, but yeah, it's my subcommittee.
Bob, is your subcommittee 3 members?
Yep, it's 3.
So it's 3 and 3.
Yep.
Did I see a hand come up? Who would like to go first?
All right, thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Woodard, and thank you, Madam Mayor. So first of all, I guess, yes, I also agree. Let's move forward with this process. I appreciate our RFA board committee group taking the lead and really running with this and working with the Fire Commission Board and the Intergovernmental Committee and kind of negotiating, but also looking at bringing a recommendation to us as a council, and kind of appreciate you guys taking the lead on a number of different factors, whether timing on the election. You know, and I think that Councilmember Murray raises a great point, as was pointed out earlier, that we could have the election in April of this year, but have it not take effect for 12 months, then thereby having it, the actual tax rate or taxation begin in 2025. I think that's a very worthwhile consideration to determine. But at the same time, we need to make sure that, and so that's something I also love to hear your feedback on as our board, our representation, and bring that recommendation to us as far as timing of the election, timing of the actual implementation, and you know, potentially taking full advantage of the contract we have in place now all the way through the end of 2024, but being ready and making sure that we have sufficient time to educate the voters, try again if necessary, in time to be able to make that change by 2025, assuming that we get voter buy-in. But then, and also talking about the offsetting, you know, and I mean, I can tell you that my position is that I think is critical if we want to pass this, that we you know, offset the taxes 1 for 1 or whatever, right? So it's an even split. The taxpayer is going to be, we're paying X amount of dollars for our fire services, and that will come off of our budget. At the end of the day, but I think that's, I'm looking forward to hearing, you know, your thoughts and your particularly messaging and how we want to talk with our citizens about this process and bringing that forward over the next couple of months and making a decision if necessary by February 21st. So thank you.
Now, are you okay now? Okay. I think we know what our next steps are.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so next we're going to review the council member applications. I understand that we had 13 total.
Yes.
Are
Yes,
you giving me
Mayor, that's correct. The councilmember vacancy process has produced 13 applications with the deadline we had established of last week. And of course, as you're all aware, this is to fill the vacancy with the resignation of Councilmember McCardle. And just a brief review of qualifications. I think you're all aware that an applicant needs to be a resident of the city for at least a year, has to be a registered voter in the city, has to be 18 years old or older, and has to not have a felony charge in their background. And so the original plan for this evening was to see if the council wanted to have an executive session to discuss relative qualifications among the candidates, but it is my understanding that the intent would be to interview all 13, in which case there's no need at this point to go through a discussion of this individuals or a screening, if that's correct. And so I did talk earlier to the mayor and the mayor pro tem, and there seemed to be that suggestion that while 13 is a larger number than perhaps you've had before, it's still a manageable number. So what we've put together is a process, subject to your concurrence this evening, that would call for a Saturday session because of the schedules that you all have. And we're looking at the date of January 14th, which would give us enough time to do the preparation for the interview questions, to get your input into that, and then also do the background checks and to set up the appointments. The plan would be to interview each of the 13 in a 20-minute format, so it would be a fairly rapid succession. But the city clerk has been good enough to put together a proposed schedule, so it would start roughly around 9 o'clock with review of the questions and the process, and then a sequence of the interviews with certainly a break in between, concluding roughly around 4 o'clock with an executive session, at which time the council could discuss their impressions and the relative qualifications among the applicants. By state law, as I understand it, and we do have Alexandra Kenyon from our city attorney's firm to weigh in if necessary, but state law does require that these interviews be done in a public session. So it's there is no option of an alternative in terms of an executive session to do these interviews. However, there can be an executive session to discuss the qualifications once you're concluded with the interviews. That would lead to a consensus forming, but in a public meeting you would then make a decision, and you could do all of that on the 14th if you're amenable to do that. So again, we're proposing to move forward with your concurrence for a January 14th interview process, and inviting all 13, if they're all qualified, to come forward, and then take it from there to walk through both the interviews and a lunch break, of course, and then an executive session at the conclusion. So that's a brief overview of an option for you to pursue. And so, Madam Mayor, this is really up to you and the council to determine if this is the way you want to move forward.
Does that sound okay for the rest? It's be Saturday, January 14th. It will be interviewing all 13 of them. Councilmember Woodard?
Thank you, Mayor. Absolutely not would be my vote. That weekend is MLK Day of Service. There's a lot going on. I think we'd be putting an unnecessary strain on folks who already have plans for that weekend. And I know that another weekend was proposed, the weekend after that, which if we can stall this RFA vote, I think we can wait a whole of a week to bring another council member up to this dais. So that's my opinion.
So there are one person that can't make the 14th and two people that can't make the 21st.
How about the 28th?
Did you want to, it's going to be an all-day. Oh, I don't think I can make the 20th. You can't do February?
Yeah, there's a limit. Yeah, there's a threshold of doing this before 90 days after the seat was vacated, or else the Snohomish County Council gets to do it for us. And so the 90 days after December 19th would be March 19th. So we're not bumping up against the deadline.
February 4th would be okay. And we're looking at city manager interviews for March 4th, right?
That's correct. The proposed date for the city manager interviews would be Saturday, March 4th. Right, that was on the, yeah, that hasn't been yet proposed officially, but that's what's in the consultant's schedule is March 4th for the Saturday. So yeah, so again, for city manager interviews, subject to all the steps between now and then going forward, that would be March 4th, again, a Saturday. And am I hearing consensus by council for a specific council member application interview process of a date other than the 14th?
We would probably have to find out if all 13 are available, if we're changing months on us. Pardon?
Yeah, I think
don't
in the posting, we threw out some tentative dates. I don't think we committed to a specific date. So I think the city certainly has prerogative to change the date. And of the 13 candidates, at the risk of sounding cavalier, I mean, they need to be available for when, that'd be true of the city manager candidates as well. I mean, once the council decides when the interviews will take place, the candidates have to be there. I don't mean they have to be there, but that would be, well, we're not going to check with them as to what's convenient. We would just move forward. But there's no requirement that we do this on the 14th of January.
If I remember correctly, in the past, we had one person or so not make it, but their application was in, so we looked at their application. Am I remembering this correctly? But,
Well, yeah, there's no, to my knowledge, there's no legal requirement that you interview anybody. So you could make an appointment based upon the application. So if there's someone, if the majority of council members wanted to appoint a certain person who, for whatever reason, could not make the interview date, that doesn't mean you cannot consider that person. I guess my hunch is that if somebody's really serious about wanting to be on the council, that they would make themselves available as best they could. Now, granted, obviously there are exceptions for illness and other things. So.
well, my preference would be to do it in January, but I understand if we have to, we'll have to just make do with the other dates. February 4th? Would that be agreeable to everybody on this? Councilmember Woodard?
Here I go again. Actually, the 4th, I could do the 4th if we started at afternoon. I've already committed to the Edmond School District. They have a Black History Month event that's going to take place at our library, and they're building around my participation is the easiest way to say that. But it's listed as 10 a.m. start. So if we could push our start time back, I can just walk across the parking lot to be here. But I cannot do that on the 14th.
Okay, well,
I'm just saying, I as much as I would like to say, hey, let's just go ahead and you all can do the 14th, let's do it, I can't. I've already committed. Again, we don't get much time in the space. January and February is our time, so we're going to acknowledge that this council member has obligations on those weekends. But I could do the 4th because I think that the Edmond School District is still in enough planning that I could say, hey, I got to be out of there by noon, and they could work with that on February 4th.
we're going to be going all day, all night.
Oh, well, you can also do it without me. There's an option. and then you could do it on the 14th.
If we go ahead and just do it with 5 council members, can we have the council member that's not present put in his top 3 or a vote or whatever? Is that?
I appreciate you trying to include me, but this is how diversity works, and sometimes that means you don't get to be included. So if that's how we're going to play it, that's going to be how it's going to be done. I cannot make a fair judgment off of the applications. I appreciate everyone's application. You did a wonderful job. I'm honored to have read your thoughts of why you should be up here with us, but I need to hear you, not go with who's the best writer.
It's going to be on Zoom.
Yeah, I'm occupied the whole day.
Oh,
so
you're
that's it.
occupied all day. Yes.
No, we're doing the interviews in person, but.
And, yeah, the interviews are in person. But if anybody wanted to watch. Oh, they can watch. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say it's got to be new, because that wasn't how mine was. Yeah, well, that wasn't how ours was. It was very quiet.
I'm just curious, did I miss something? I know a number of you talked about the 21st, but did the 28th get discussed as well, or not?
So the 14th wouldn't work, the 28th wouldn't work, the 4th of February wouldn't work. What about, or maybe looking at February 18th, but we all don't have our calendar.
Oh, the
Well, there's
11th
a-
didn't work.
Well, that gets quite late into the year. Councilmember Ryan, did you have something?
I wanted to add that if we're doing interviews, is that something we could do privately, like in an exec session of sorts? I would not want to be broadcasting interviews personally.
The state law requires that an interview for an elected official be done in a public meeting, so there is no executive session option. And because you've been, not you, but because this council's been televising its proceedings or doing it on a hybrid, to exclude that now would be viewed as perhaps a violation of the Open Public Meetings Act. So we've been advised not to do it that way, but it cannot be done in executive session legally.
Thank you, I understood.
We had a robust discussion about that earlier today. Very same concern.
Go ahead.
Another option would be go into exec session now and whittle it down to 7 people. And then we'd have more time for interviews, I guess, or less time for interviews. Something to think about.
Yeah, that's certainly an option council could take.
Councilmember Murray?
Or to build off that, I mean, could we do a Sunday or potentially split it up into 2 sessions where we do half one day and half another to better accommodate schedules and not push things out so far? Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, if we broke it up, we wouldn't have to necessarily do a weekend.
That'd be two evenings and an executive session. Well, we're going to have to find 2 evenings that everybody here.
For the budget workshops, you certainly did do that. You did several evening workshops back to back in 1 week. No. I'm just using an example of the budget workshops where the council did meet 2 nights in a row doing the budget workshop. So this would not set a precedent for you to meet that often, but I want to be respectful of your time in terms of how to best.
There's been times where we've had to meet every day of the week here. So, I just think, just to make it so everybody can call is part that I would like. And I understand having whittling it down, but I really would like to meet everybody.
Well, our calendars are already full on evenings and Olympia. Some of us go to Olympia more than once a year. So it all depends on which 2 nights it is. And do we want to pick the nights now, or do we want to discuss this?
Well,
'Cause we
the
really
sooner
should-
the
Yes.
the better. I mean, you don't have to do all this within the next 10 days, but to at least set the timetable so we can let the candidates know and prepare the
Right,
staff, because
yeah, we
staff
need
would
to
have to
let
be here to
everybody-
support that as well. And yeah.
Yes.
Another suggestion, rather than on the weekend, take our off Thursday, the 19th, and do half the 19th, and then our off the 23rd, Monday, and do half on the Monday. So we have 2 meetings a week, but it's not on the weekend. Just an idea of that kind of thoughts, whether it's 19 and 23 or something else.
Well, that's Hill Day.
Oh, that DEIC meets and DEIC, I think, meets on the 18th.
Are you talking about 18th and 19th of January? Is that what we're looking at now?
It won't work
Yeah.
for me. I've already paid.
Or 1923, or, I don't know about Friday.
Um,
Probably not. 1920, I don't know.
So if we do it earlier, well, like next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, well, I'd have to give up other stuff to do this, but, Monday, Tuesday is available. We have city council that week. Yeah.
We have meetings on 12th and 16th.
Except 16 will be
So the
pushed.
16th is the
16th is a
holiday.
holiday.
Your council meeting's on the 17th. What about the week following, the week of the 23rd, so the 24th and 5th, or 5th and
Well, we
6th?
apparently can't do that. Monday, the 30th, would that work? Huh? Monday, Tuesday, the 30th, and the 31st of, oh, no, hold it, is that, yeah, of January.
All right, there's no council meeting then. Is that 30th and 31st? Does that work?
Well, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday night. 30th, January 30th, 31st, and February 1st, if we're doing it at night.
So you're talking about 3 nights?
No, those are 3 nights that,
Oh, I mean, two
we can-
of those 3 nights.
2 of those 3 nights.
Right, so 30th and 31st would be a Monday and Tuesday. There is no council meeting then. And then are we talking about, 6 to 9 or something like that to schedule 20 minutes apiece? Yeah, start at 6 and then,
You want to do it at 6 to whenever, and then do most of them, like more than half, the first night, because the second night, we're going to go into executive session, so,
we could do 7 the first night and 6 the second night.
and then executive session. Well, we'll probably go to 6 to 9:30.
Yeah, we can, Jennifer and I can put together a schedule that will accommodate that if if that meets with all 6 of you, your ability.
That
so.
works for everybody? All right.
So
So
what 2 days?
January 30th and 31st, Monday and Tuesday.
Okay, so just to confirm that we're talking about Monday, January 30th, Tuesday, January 31st, evening, roughly 6 p.m., both nights. And we can provide some sandwiches or something if that's helpful. Okay, I'm not seeing any one of you express concern.
I
So-
think that we're okay with all of that. Did you have something to say?
I just wanted to give a sincere thank you to this council. I'm not going on vacation or anything like that, but I could not move the 14th, so I appreciate that we found a way to keep my voice in this conversation. I was willing to concede, though, because I recognize the seriousness of the decision that's at hand. So just want to say thank you. I very much appreciate that.
We don't want to leave anyone out. All right, so we've picked the dates. Hopefully that will be okay for staff too.
We can make it work. You have a very flexible staff.
You work 2 nights in a row, but you get Saturday off. All right, so are we done with the council?
Yeah, just one final comment, Mayor, if I might, on the process. I will, Jennifer and I will initiate the backgrounding after this evening to let all 13 know that they are being requested to come in and that they do need to go as a copy of their driver's license so we can do the backgrounding. And then secondly, I will send some draft questions to each of you based in part on what was done last time, but also what seems to be a reasonable set of questions. If you could respond just to me, not to each other, but just to me about, preferred questions, then we can then narrow this down to the questions that you all want to ask, and that would expedite the process. So I'll be sending that out in the next couple of days.
Councilmember Woodard?
We have until the end of the month. I'm going to ask now, from a public record standpoint, because I was on the other side of this, so I don't know, do you take notes? Do you not take notes? Because I realize, that's technically public information. Like, how does that work for us? And we don't have to answer that tonight. Just know that I will need that direction. So there's no way I'm going to remember all these folks and not have to write something down. But I don't know if that means we hand it over. So
It's not executive session.
that's kind of my point.
I can answer that for you, Councilmember.
Thank you.
Thank you, please do.
Alex Kenyon here for Hillary. Your notes and the application materials would be subject to disclosure since these are not applications for employment. It's an appointed office.
Thank you.
No, you can't do that. Well, then they'll request your doodles. All right, are we done with this?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you.
All right, thank you. So we're going to move on to council liaison reports. And we'll start with Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. I think mine is pretty short this time. I think after our last meeting, if I'm recalling correctly, we had on the 20th of December, we met with our 32nd district delegation. It was a nice opportunity to connect with our legislators who are now representing our entire community, and just really appreciated hearing about some of their priorities for this upcoming legislative session, as well as the opportunity to share our priorities, particularly around Main Street Phase 2. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor. Almost the exact same report. 32nd District meeting on the 20th. The only thing I did differently was today I participated in the Economic Alliance of Snohomish County's coffee chat as a listener.
All right, Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. Beginning of the month, I have nothing to report.
Councilmember Sonmore.
I just also want to say, I felt the legislative meeting went very well. And also Bicentennial Park, that's why I was asking about the wagon too. I was there in 1976 when that park opened. And so I've been seeing a lot of positive feedback on Facebook about the park and the new play equipment. So thank you for the city for that.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A rubber stamp report on 32nd Legislative District meeting. And then earlier today, Mayor and I met with the interim and assistant city manager to discuss city issues and topics and fun, exciting things that we're doing here in Mountlake Terrace. Concludes my report. Other than that, Happy New Year.
Yes. So my report is also very, very short due to the holidays and the weather. We can't forget that weather. So the 32nd Legislative District meeting was supposed to be in person, but it ended up on Zoom because there was no way people could drive and be safe. And I think that we have, now that our whole city is in one district, legislative district, I think we have a really good, we've gotten to know our senator and representatives well, and I think that we're going to be doing just fine working with them. I had a special Board of Health Executive Committee meeting, though, that I had to attend, and that was the last one of the year, I hope. Well, it is past last year, so, and the Board of Health should now, as of today, be a part of Snohomish County. And so I think I'm off the health board, but I don't know for sure. And that is the end of my report. Next is new business. Does anyone have any new business? Councilmember Woodard?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't want to start this. Technically, it's old business, but it starts new in the sense of, I think you all are on some levels on social media, so you saw the announcement of a potential 8-story building where the current park and ride is, and wow, did that generate a lot of feedback. So I want to start by saying thank you to all the residents and armchair quarterbacks out there who got in the game, which is to say this was more than telecasted, if you will, of a possibility. And so I encourage you to go back through our archives and find all those ways to get involved. I think this council's done a wonderful job to make sure that we're trying to get public feedback. We literally have public comments in the beginning to make sure that we don't make you stick around. But it'd be very helpful to be in front of these opportunities. That's my way of saying when I got involved by just saying, hey, this is happening, it led to a conversation between myself and a council member at another city in another state who asked the question, hey, do you all have an inclusionary housing ordinance? Because if you weed through the 100+ comments, you'll see that, hey, what are you doing for low-income folks? And how are we supposed to afford this? Those are all the comments that are there. And, we know market values and all that. But it raised the question, did we have that? And I had to admit, I hadn't heard of that. I kind of rung a bell, but didn't. So I did a long story short, too late, search of our website and said, hey, just put in inclusionary housing ordinance. And actually something did come up from March 2019. To bring us back in time, that was about the third week I was on council. It was a draft document, and it listed a lot of, here is what the city recommends that we do. I think the city prepared it. It was a beautiful document. I asked our city clerk to forward it to you. I just saw online that it has been forwarded to you all. But I just wanted to put that in front of us because a lot's happened in that same 4 years, a thing called COVID. And so in that regard, I don't even know if anyone remembers that. I know I don't, as a new council member. Even though it's in front of me, I'm like, there was a lot of information in front of me that first couple of weeks. But just kind of putting that out there and suggesting that we as a council revisit that at some point to see how we're doing. As I read through it, I was humbled to realize that this council, with the exception of Steve Woodard, has probably been working from that document. So I wanted to applaud you all because you'll see a lot of the stuff that was suggested has been put in motion or at least been discussed and come to some form of decision as opposed to us not being aware of it. But that said, 2019 versus 2023, holy moly, 2023, I said it right for the first time. Lots of change, so it might be worth our time to revisit that because even though I called you an armchair quarterback, that you're still a quarterback out there and you had some great points that you were making. And I will just say I don't know that it will impact this current conversation, but it was enough to get me to revisit and find out something that was put in front of me a long time ago, which 4 years in a council is a long time. So just putting that out there to say, if anyone else gets a chance to read that and has that same opinion, that we should revisit that document, if nothing else, just as a, to figure out how we're doing. I would support that, and I know we were talking, at least online, about us having a retreat soon, or at least we always seem to do a retreat. I'd be open to that being a discussion at the retreat as well. I would support that if somebody else had that opinion. I think it's just worth reading, if nothing else. And I would say, Councilmember Murray, maybe you already knew about it, but clearly it happened before you even on council. And again, it didn't come up anywhere else, so I can't imagine that we've seen that discussion at any other time. So that's my new/old business, and I think the Mayor Pro Tem wants to jump in.
Did you have something, Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, thank you for raising that, and it is a great document, and we have been talking about these things for a number of years, and how to address this. And remember, we also funded in the budget a housing action plan. Just earlier today, the mayor and I were talking with the interim city manager about scheduling a time for the council to discuss that very topic, and so we are expecting to bring that up soon. We've been talking about it. Just like ARPA funds, we've been talking about it for a number of years, and now it's time to take some action. So we're looking forward to scheduling some time for discussion with the council and jumping on that stuff. So thank you for raising it. Thank you for sharing that document. Resharing.
Anyone else? Well, I think that people know that I am on several housing committees at the state level and at the county level, and I'm a past HASCO, which is the Housing Authority of Snohomish County. I was a past commissioner for 15 years, and a realtor for all that time too. So I have seen housing at just about every level, and if people have questions about the housing that's coming on, the density that we have to do, please reach out to some of us council members, because we've been talking about it for a really, really long time. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is I have been approached by a citizen in our city about a center in Linwood. They're putting and I should have written it down, it's not an opioid prevention center, but it's a treatment center of some kind, which is sorely needed in our community, but it happens to be, the location happens to be right next door to the Boys and Girls Club of Alderwood Manor. And I've seen the whole social media people for and against it. And apparently they had a gathering over in Linwood City Hall this evening about it. But I just wanted to bring it up here in Mountlake Terrace because probably other citizens will ask some of us about the same thing. And what are we going to do about it? Well, being in Mountlake Terrace, I don't know what we can do about it, but we can at least say that we heard your voice. Right. It's a regional thing. But yes, it is going to be located right next door to the Boys and Girls Club. Okay. I think that's all I had to say. Is anyone else? Everyone else is okay. So then the next item on our agenda is adjournment. We are adjourned.